Alrighty guys, so we are back with another anime anatomy tutorial. So I took basically a lot of the things you guys said and we're going to be covering a lot of it here. But the thing is, you guys said quite a few things that kind of need their own video, so we're going to kind of go over a lot of this stuff in their basic form to get you guys started, and I can do further videos later on them. But like, for example, feet and legs, that's actually something I've done before, but I can go over them again in a different way. And then heads and necks, that's something I've kind of done before, but I haven't gone into all the way. And there's definitely a bunch of different positions to do. And something I want to eventually do is, and probably starting within my new launch that I'm going to be doing, I'll be talking about soon with you guys, is basically more sheets of like reference photos that you guys could go off of. But yeah, in any case, let's start off with, we got the legs, feet, we got head, neck, and then we got hands and dynamic poses. These are some sketches that I did pre-video, so that way we just have them there as reference. But and maybe we'll clean them up as we go. But let's lock these and make them like a bluish color fill. Alright, so basically with the legs, one way I like to think of them, let's kind of just go over, we want to remember the form of these. That's what these lines are here. They're just kind of form lines. And with the legs, one thing I always like to remember is, am I on a different layer? Yes, I am. Okay, cool. One of the things I like to remember with legs is a leg is pretty much a cylinder. So let's draw a cylinder here. This is going to be the thigh. But what we do is we then cut into the thigh and this is the shape of a thigh, essentially. It's this sort of cylinder-esque shape. It's very close to a cylinder, and if we were to rotate it this way, it would do the same thing. So essentially it's just skinnier towards the bottom because it's going towards the knees. You could see it up here where it's fatter up here because of the muscles, and the muscles go down into this area down here. So it's fatter up towards the top part and then skinnier towards the knee. And that's essentially what I like to do for that part. Now, one way to construct the legs is essentially out of cylinders, is just doing that, which is a good base. And so, oh, I accidentally selected that. So, and that's a good base because then you can, as long as you know your shapes well, can move these shapes around and do this type of thing with them. One thing I like to note is try not to make your calf part too much smaller than your thigh part. You want to have them close to equal in their own way. You want to make sure you don't want to have your knee down here or this part of your leg too small. It will make it look really strange. Having them somewhat equal will at least balance that out, and then you can play with your own ratioing. But I typically like to keep my calf part a little bit bigger. So what we can do from here is I'm going to now do the calf part. Let's go to blue. So the calf part let's do another cylinder. This one's going to be a little bit longer of a cylinder. Let's try to make it as even of a cylinder as possible. Put a guideline there. Let's go back to red. And essentially, I could have made this bigger, but essentially what the shape for a calf is like this. I keep it pretty much straight on this side. This is a side view of a leg. So for a front view of a leg, let's make another cylinder. So a front view of a leg, let's imagine it like that. Go back to red. So what we would do with this is, essentially, it depends on if you want to cut inward or go further outward, but the calves of the front definitely show through, and it turns into something closer to that. Where we got it bigger up here and smaller down there, so it's this curved kind of feel. And then from the side, that's why when you see it from the side, you see it doing this. You see the calf doing this because of your calf muscles. So that's what the shape is, and that's what that slight little line right here is, that curve. That's why I said this calf is from the side. Not completely from the side, but so now let's just start moving these around. So if, for example, let's color this in with green real quick. These are essentially the calf muscles right here showing from the back. That's why those bulge out and create that shape. If we were to do it from the back, it would pretty much be the same idea, but from the back, it would pretty much just be the same shape. But if you were to be drawing muscle detail, it would look a little bit different, like this, for example, because we're showing the actual muscle from the back. Of course, these would be lighter and more intricate, depending on how defined you want to make the muscle. Oh, sorry guys. Okay, so just in case you were wondering why the volume goes in and out sometimes, that's only because that's when I stop the video and I start the video again, because I take little breaks in between each section. But okay, so now let's get into doing this all together. These shapes, so basically if you were to practice these shapes, let's get rid of this. If you were to practice these shapes over and over again from different angles and just taking reference from like actual legs, it would help dramatically. And especially just learning cylinders like these ones, that would help dramatically as well. So if we were to, now the connection between the two, as you could see over here, let's go to green, let's go to a different layer, and you could see it doing this right there on both sides. And that's just part of, you know, the bone down there, and like that's not actually the kneecap itself doing that, but I don't know the exact muscles and bones and stuff like that, but I just know the general shape. So let's go with this shape here. So if we were to draw the leg in that cylinder-like format that we were doing, we're going to start with a thigh here, and we're going to go down. We would want to kind of pull out this little part on this side, and go in. It's so I would like to think of it like that. And then I would connect it with a kneecap, and then we would go straight in with, here, to make it easier, let's just go cylinder first with both of the shapes that we have, that we just went over on how to draw them. There we go. Now what we would want to do from here is let's copy and paste that, and let's pull it over. Now what we want to do from here is, if we were to erase that, this is your kneecap. And then see that little bump right there that we were showing? What we would do is we would pull that in and then let this turn into this kind of shape. So essentially it does this, goes along that cylinder format that we were doing, and then it curves in. Then this one connects here, curves out, goes down, and it looks weird at first until you then start adding the kneecap in. And then this goes into the kneecap. So now let's just draw, I'm going to draw a couple legs, kind of just doing their thing, bending. We've got the kneecap here. Let's bend this. Draw that calf shape. And voila, we've got a bending leg. Just like that. And this is the simple format of it, just to follow it as basic as possible. And from there you can figure out muscle style you like to do. One thing to note, especially with women, is wanting to put this is your thigh, and then taking this calf part and off-centering it a little bit. Don't put it directly underneath it, off-centering it just a little bit over that direction. This is a left leg. So the reason we would do that is because if we look at the leg from the side, it's kind of a weird thing, the leg from the side, because it actually curves back like this and then curves forward like that. That's the best way to think about it. And then we got the foot. And it's kind of a strange thing, but it works and it helps. And I'm sure you guys have seen, well, see, this is a different angle. So if we were to do it from this one over here is a different angle than if we were to do it turned this way. Let's turn it the opposite direction. So something closer to this one here, but turned a little bit more towards us, but just ever so slightly. So, or let's turn it the other direction, because then we would have our kneecap here, have this here. I would add in maybe a little calf there, and then it will go forward a little bit, and you can see this general shape going on here where it goes like this, like that. And that's something to remember, is to offset it a little bit. Now, one way to keep that in mind when drawing stuff is it's fun to maybe do some wrap lines like this. That I don't know if this help you guys at all, but so that's like a kneecap there. Some wrap lines that essentially just wrap downward over into the kneecap, and then we have this popping out like that, and the foot and whatnot. And then, from here, that like this leg looks stiff, and the trick is to learn how to make it look natural, and that's part of what we were showing with kind of pulling the off-centering of the calf area from the other leg. So that's essentially how you would build a leg. Let's draw one from the back real quick. And essentially what that would be. And you can see me kind of implementing those shapes of like the calf and stuff I did earlier with making these top parts bigger and it's smaller towards the bottom parts down here. And yeah, that's pretty much the basic for the legs, but we got to move on to some other stuff, like a quick foot tutorial. So if we're not going to be drawing a bunch of toes right now, let me tell you that. I'm going to give you a basic foot, kind of just a basic foot shape that I use. Doing toes themselves will be like going into hands, but so my basic foot shape is just like this guy here. And is this on a, okay. So what I like to do is I like to make a line right here on the foot a lot of the time. And that just signifies kind of just a form that I like to think of, because it breaks apart kind of like the direction change when it starts going up this direction. So that's where the direction change would be. And then from there, we would have this back part, which is the heel. So let's do that here. And let's go down. All right. So basically the outside of the foot, we have both of them here. We got this very slight curve. It's better to think of it not even curved, but this is the outside of the foot. And then this is the inside of the foot with your foot arch. So when we go to draw these, let's go to blue. We got a foot that, okay, let's do the foot shape literally like that from the outside. From there, we would be able to then do an ever so slightly dip in, go down like this, connect like that. And it's just a really simple foot shape, because then you would be putting a shoe on top of it or something like that, you know? Now from the inside, let's go back to blue. From the inside, we're going to be looking at a shape like, kind of like the same shape as this top part here, but when we go back, we're going to curve in, curve down, go back, like that, and that's the arch of the foot. One thing that we mix up a lot is when we're drawing feet, is we put an arch on the outside of the foot, and I do that myself as well, which there isn't an arch on the outside of the foot, even though it looks right sometimes. That's why I put a slight arch on the outside of the foot. Now let me draw another foot over here. That is, let's say, to the same body. All right, so, and that's why I put an ever so slight arch on the outside of the foot, but I put a more drastic arch on the inside of the foot. And this is a really basic shape for drawing feet that I like to use. And as for drawing toes and stuff, like I said, that would be like going into hands. maybe that someone actually mentioned hands. I did do a hand tutorial, so I may not go into hands as much in this one, and it is still on my Patreon, so that one's around. But maybe I'll do maybe I'll do feet and hands at some point. Do like a sheet of them, even if I'm not necessarily showing you exactly how to do it. I could definitely do like a reference sheet for you guys. Now, let's say we want to draw this from the front. I would draw this kind of top part signifying this part up here, and then I would drop it down. This is where this line really comes in handy for me. I would draw this line, and then we got this back heel part that kind of dips in. Then we follow this line. That's what that is. And when we take this one, we pull it out ever so slightly. You can tell it's not a straight line. It's like going a little bit a different direction than this top line. And then we snap it right back in. And that's from the front. And if we were to do it from the bottom, this is closer to what it's going to look like from the bottom. I'm doing this top part right now. And now we're going to go down like this. This is from this side here, from a below view. So we got that ever so slight curve right there that we've been talking about. I'm going to go and connect this. I'm going to come down and connect it like that. And then we're going to go in and create that foot arch. So that's from below. I might even say that this is too high. Let's create that line that I like to create. And that's from the bottom. So this is a good way to think of feet when you're drawing them, as for a simple shape. And from the side, what I like to think of is it curves out a little bit in the heel area. So it's not a straight line. Curves out a little bit in the heel area. We're going to go down, and then we're going to not go completely straight like that, but we're going to curve like this at a good angle. And this is from the side without the arch. We're going to do a slight curve in and then connect. And then from the inside, let's curve out ever so slightly. We're going to give that arch. We're going to go down, and then we're going to connect in. So that's a quick way to remember feet, just for feet shape. If you were to want to go into drawing toes from there, that's a whole other thing where basically you would want to end up thinking of the feet in terms of, we would have to, sorry, I'm trying to find a good color here that doesn't overlay too bad. We would want to think of it closer to something like that. So it's giving you a good layout for being able to do toes. You just have to learn how to do toes, essentially. But I guarantee most of you aren't going to be drawing a bunch of toes, and we don't really have a whole lot of time for toes. But yeah, we could do that on maybe a hand video as well, since it goes hand and foot. Get it? Hand in hand, hand and foot. Oh gosh. Okay, so now we got all this stuff. This is a whole lot going on here. Oh boy. Oh nope. Holy moly. I'm trying to kind of fix this up so that way we have some room up in here to do the heads. So as you can see, as I've been going along, that it's really important to really know how to draw shapes in different like angles and perspectives. And that's why I stress that so much, because it makes it so much easier to be able to draw these things. But yes. So let's move on to this head here. Let's go to red actually. So heads and necks. Head positions is something that I do want to do a full sheet on, just do a bunch of them for you guys. But a good base is to really understand the skull. So this is the midline, and then I'm going to draw this little skull piece right here. And essentially, this is the skull. And that's why the head, even an anime head, has this shape. We have the eyebrow, then we have the cheekbone, and it's all because of this eye socket here. And then we got the nose. So, and then we got the jaw that connects to the knee bone. No, okay. We got this going up this way. And we got that thing going on, that whole thing going on. So this is roughly what's going on with the skull on top of it. And this is something good to remember, because things, when you learn the skull, things will make more sense, even when you're looking at an anime face. But for now, we're just going to go based off these guidelines. See these guidelines that I have here? I simplified it a lot more within these guidelines. I think I made a whole new layer for this. Yeah, I did. Right? No? I'm going to lower the density of that. But yeah, so that's essentially what these small little blue guidelines are right here and here, here, here. It's following the eye socket. And then if we were to follow it across like that, now you know kind of where to put the eyes, if we were to put eyes right there. And that's probably how we're going to be drawing the eyes in most of these, just for a center. Because if we were then to draw, like, you know, some actual eyes around these things, you know, the eyes would come about. It's just a placeholder, so that way you're not drawing the full eyes, you're focusing on the shape of something. And if you're sitting there focusing on the eyes are something you can practice separately to get good at them. That's why, like, the whole deconstructing and reconstructing idea. So now as for necks, this is an interesting one. So let's go to like yellow, maybe orange. Let's create another layer. So underneath we got this neck shape. Now this is what's important, is to know where the jaw connects to the neck. And that is all this is. So let's go ahead and draw this cylinder shape. This is the easiest way to get down to this point. So let's draw it from the side. Let's draw this head from the side. So this is a cylinder shape. Let's make it a cylinder. I kind of just made it like a square. Alright, so a slight cylinder. Now, if we were to have a head on here, this is why it's good to understand the skull structure. That's essentially how the head fits on to a cylinder. And let's draw a cylindrical line going down this way. And so what we would like to remember is, if the jaw essentially lines up with that cylindrical line in the middle almost, if we had a cylinder on this side, this is the side cylindrical line. So if you essentially learn how to draw, alright, so if you essentially learn how to draw this cylinder and be able to then connect this kind of just generic shoulder shape like this from any position, and just remember I'm cutting off the shoulder area. I'm not going down into the shoulders, just for the sake of only focusing on this part of the tutorial, and it makes it easier to try to grasp the concept. Let's move these even further apart. Could just move them next to each other, Chris. Kuzo. Alright, yeah, let's do that. Let's move them next to each other. So now what we're looking at is we're going to be trying to find this cylindrical line, which is right. That's the front cylindrical line. That's the side one. This side one. That'd be the front one. So what we're going to be looking for, okay, there's a few things. One, you want to learn how to draw that really simple head shape, which is this head shape. Super simple head shape. I'm going to make it out of a square. Super simple head shape. You want to learn how to draw that from every angle. And that's how you would create it from a square, is if I had a square like this, I would then pull that part down like this, pull it back, and that's the jaw. Essentially, the top square part is the whole dome, and this bottom part is the jaw, which the jaw comes into a shape that, you know, looks like this when you think of a jaw. Just the jaw by itself, by the way. That's essentially what the jaw looks like, you know, and just a basic idea of what a jaw looks like. And that's what this whole shape is. And then, so let's take that and let's go ahead and try to draw that shape on top of this. So now remember, we're talking about the jaw hits here. Maybe this neck should have been a little bit longer, but let's do that because I don't want to mess with you guys' minds. Let's make these necks a little bit longer. Alright, there we go. We made the necks a little bit longer. Alright, so now let's draw the heads on top of them. If we go based off this cylindrical line that we were talking about, how the jaw essentially almost lines up with it, we draw the jaw there, draw it down, then draw this line all the way up here, draw it back just like this up here, draw back here, and then look at this shape here, connects like that. We would connect it like that, and boom, you have a head on a neck. And same with this one. If the jawline is going to line up right here, that means we have, this is the point in which when you look at a head, we have this dome part. And then it does that. That's the jawline. That is the curving point of the jawline. So if we were to look at it from the side, this would essentially be the point in which we would go up, and then it does that. So that's the kind of notch point at your jaw that then goes, it stops there, then changes direction up to the ear. So if that's the point in which it goes up, that means this part curves in, and then that means this whole dome part becomes the dome. And that's how you start building the idea of how to put a head on a neck, no matter what position you draw that neck in. So if I were to draw it like this, it means, let's say that's the side center line. I draw that, this. But it's imperative to know all these shapes very well on their own. So you would want to practice this random square head shape on its own quite frequently. all the time. So there, we have a head shape. Although I would probably curve this in a little bit more, like that. Then we would have some eyes, draw some eyes in here, like that. And this is how I learned how to draw the head onto a cylinder, because basing, just like I've always talked about, deconstruct and reconstruct, we want to learn the simplest way to draw it so that way we can understand what we're drawing. So that's how I do that. And just really quick with this shape up here, I'm going to throw underneath it little red. So if we, kind of reverse what we just did with, we have a headpiece, now we want to draw the cylinder in. If we remember about this center line, we would draw the center line here, or we would just in general draw the cylinder. There we go, we got the cylinder, and then bam. So if I were to erase that, it looks correct. It looks right. So so essentially that's how you would do that. Now head positions and all different angles with this stuff, it changes it slightly, but you can tilt these stuff however you would like. So let's find, there we go. Let's find this head. And if I were to take this is the easiest one to tilt because it's, it's from the side. You can actually do that. So if I tilt it, there, he's looking upward. So I'm going to be doing a bunch of other head positions for reference sheets at some point. So that will come with those kinds of sheets. But now to break down the women's body, that is the next one. So like I said, all of these can have their own separate tutorial because they're so intricate. There's so many things that go into it. But like I said, I'm giving you guys the basic rundown of everything you guys asked, or else this video could go on for like 5 hours. Because I like to talk about arts. Alright, so women's bodies is going to be a little bit harder to break down in this because just like how I talked a lot about everything on this page, and they're just small little portions, this comes into a whole lot more. But let's get into it and try to do it. So women's bodies I like to break into I've had several different ways of doing it, but I always have the torso area, and then we have this midsection that goes into essentially something that separates the mid muscle there, and then we have, this is the hip, and the hips are very important for drawing women. This is like, you could have a whole top portion and then change it into a man by drawing the legs differently. That's essentially what the conclusion I've came to with drawing women. So it's all in the hips. If I were to, so a guy essentially just has a much slimmer fashion. Just doing that alone, if you try to ignore all the blue, just doing that alone makes it look more manly. So when drawing women, what I typically like to do is, so let's draw this top portion. I've covered this portion several times, but this like little rib cage area, what I like to do is, if we were to separate this with like a ball, this mid part with like a ball, and then, so when you look at a woman, and any person actually, but a woman definitely shows this, is they show an hourglass type figure. But depending on what style you're looking at, they may add the midsection, which is a little bit less dominant, but it's there and it helps. So what I like to do is add the midsection, and then I go down into this shape that is supposed to represent sort of the hips, essentially. So we go down into the hips and then come out like this. I'm just going to draw it here, so that way you have a good idea. I'm starting to confuse myself here, because there's a few different like notches on a woman's botte. So you can see, this is so difficult. Let's draw it from the side here. Let's draw it from the iconic pose, actually, of it curving like this. And I purposely did the legs first because then you can kind of take the same concept from those legs and see how I'm putting them into action with the woman's body. So what I have here with the woman's body is essentially, this is not the hip line here. This is the kind of leg crease area. So let's go into red. Let's go to a layer above it. So this is kind of like the crotch crease right here. Then we have up here where it connects, this is the hip. This is actually the other crease that is not, it's like the V for guys, that goes up into the hips. And this is what really changed things for me, is when I was able to, let's draw this bottom let's draw a quick little top portion, is when, so we got the rib cage area, we got this extra mid area right here, and then we have this V. It goes all the way down to the crotch. So we have this whole section that does this and then curves down, right? So we got the rib cage and whatnot. Belly button would probably go around here. Now, this is the hip area. So we're going to curve out, and this is where things get tricky, because a lot of people might do this, which, you know, doesn't look bad. But what I like to do is we also have the hip, and then we have the leg crease. Hip, leg crease. And this is something that I really like doing with my women. This is a thick one. This is a thick girl. That's what it looks like. This is something that helped me, because once you start turning the character around, it starts becoming more apparent on why you do that, because it's essentially connecting to also what the buttocks area is doing in the back. And it's really interesting. Too big of a top area here. There we go. Sorry, I got really quiet. I was starting to think a lot. But that also makes more sense once you also see the legs start bending. Because when you look at it from the front, just how we had it, and if we made it straight, when the legs bend, you will be missing a portion of the bend. Because if we were to have the body here, this whole crotch portion doing this, and then when the leg bends, remember this is the hip, so when the leg bends, there is this bulge here. There's this bulge here. So that's one of the reasons why when I learned to do two sections here, essentially. That's what we're breaking it up into. It helps in the long run because it does have a bulge right there when the leg bends. And it changes the whole dynamic of when you draw those positions, because it makes sense. It just makes sense. Back again. So if I were to try to simplify, let's make all these bigger. Oh. If I were to try to, son of a gun. If I were to try to simplify what this whole basic shape of a woman's body is, I would probably break it down into this shape that we always do for like the rib cage. And then I would break it down into one bump here, or just for the sake of no bump, let's just do it like this. This is our hourglass. Think of it like this. This is our hourglass. Not too fancy smancy. It's kind of a sucky hourglass because everything will fall through it super easily because there's not a tight enough area in between. This isn't Nami we're talking about here, all right? But then I would curve it inward like that to the crotch. And then I would go in with the kind of format of one bump, curve out, then two bump, kind of connecting. Essentially, let's do it like a triangle here. Let's actually go to like a purple. Let's create a triangle here, and then we go into what would be the cylindrical leg portion, like that. That is how I think of a woman's body when I'm drawing them, and it will help you in the long run to think of it like that. So once again, we have this. Let's go back to blue. So we have this rib cage. We're drawing it from a different position now. Rib cage area. Hourglass idea. And let's wrap this down and around. Now, from the side is where this also gets very interesting, because this triangle part is going to bulge out a little bit on this side. So, of course, it's not necessarily, it's more like a wedge when we look at it 3D. But there we go. We have that. And then let's go to the cylindrical leg portion that then connects like that. Of course, this body isn't kind of doing the exaggerated pose like when we were to do something like this. It's not doing that. So I put that in action, as you can see right here, just really quickly. That is essentially how I think of a woman's body. So I think of this whole top part first. Then I can like twist it and move it. And then I can move into this wedge part and draw the legs in. Yeah, hopefully that helped in some sort of way. So that if you guys can see what I'm talking about with everything comes down to really looking at this whole part, this whole bottom part right here and how to do it, because the top part is really just a rib cage. You can make the rib cage bigger. For example, if you were to draw skinnier hips, it would probably turn into someone that looks closer to maybe a teenage boy type of thing. And pushing and pulling these things can make them look a little bit more masculine or more feminine and stuff like that. But also depending on the muscles you put in. But that is essentially my version of how I broke down the female body, because I feel like from there, learning how to draw breasts is just one thing amongst, like, learning how all of this moves is much more complicated than learning how to draw breasts. Because breasts, there's a bunch of different techniques for them, but this is what I wanted to cover for you guys, because this is the majority of a woman's body, is essentially just the shape in general. When it comes to boobs, it's only one shape that you would replicate on two different parts. Okay, this is starting to sound really weird, but in any case, I hope you guys liked this tutorial. Hope you guys learned something from it. I definitely want to do bigger sheets, like more sheets for you guys. For those of you guys who've listened all the way to the end, I am going to be revamping the Patreon into a different format, and it will allow me to give you guys more reference sheets per se. So in any case, hope you guys are having a great day. Hope this helped you, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.